We'll go ahead and get this box car on the tracks. Just trying to think of a metaphor. It's good to see everybody in the house checking things out. I log in early, and if there's enough people here, like more than like say 20 or so, I'll start this show. Dan Boyd was first, but Johnny was right behind him. Hey, Johnny, good to see you, my friend. A couple live streams back, Johnny mentioned maybe passing through Detroit to try the Buddy's Pizza, and I said I would like to join you, and I did. We went to a Buddy's Pizza, I guess the original one, someplace in an area of Detroit I've not been to in a long time, and the pizza was amazing. But they're one of those places, they've got restaurants all over the place, and the pizza is consistent. It's very, very good. But there's something about the ambiance of the first place where I think they started serving pizza in like 1947 or something. But retired Butcher Boy's in the house, as is Mind Bend. And Larry Newcomb, good morning from El Reno. Larry Newcomb, good to see you, my friend. Daniel Kester's in the house, as is William Page and Tiger Man 99515. But Tiger Man was concerned that he was late, but I said, no, by the way, if you are here before I officially start talking and appearing on the screen, you're early. Be rare. Good afternoon. Rocks in. Happy March, everyone. Yes, it is, in fact, March. Tim Nossum. Hey, Steve. Good afternoon. Jeremy Fergus. Anyone here own any Bitcoin? Not me. I'm reading a really good book, though, about crypto called Number Go Up. Number Go Up. Check it out. Joel Kirschman's in the house, as is definitely not a lover of calf fries. Calf fries. I'm not sure what those are. Keeger 4 from Mount Dora, Florida. Joe Bonchi, thank you for testing the change in your graphic and sure it won't crash your webcast. Perhaps you could assist the California Bar Association. What a mess. What a mess. Kelly Ramsey, good afternoon, Steve. Adrian Denson, thoughts on Multiplicity? You mean the movie with Michael Keaton? I thought it was funny. I've only seen it one time, I'm pretty sure, but I did in fact enjoy it at the time. I recently watched English Patient again, and I've forgotten how long that movie was. Having seen it twice, I'm not sure I understood it, but it was again enjoyable. Johnny Knoxville's got some Bitcoin. So you can jump in and ask Johnny questions. I only read about Bitcoin. I don't own any, so I don't feel the need to, or the. I don't think I've got the basis to talk about it because I've got no skin in the game. Ian Toole, what's the USCG plaque from? It was donated by a viewer, as is about 75 to 80% of the stuff behind me. License plates and all are donated by viewers. So, D. Wood, hi, Stephen Crew. Franz Schroy, Siegel, Alaska. Is that where you're checking in from? I got friends in Alaska. United Arms Organization. Good morning, Steve, from New Mexico. United Arms, we are a gun club who ride motorcycles and love our Second Amendment. And I assume you also love your bikes too, right? I went to the Autorama yesterday. Didn't see a lot of motorcycles, but I saw a lot of vehicles. It's always good to get out and see the crazy stuff. There's all kinds of wild stuff out there in terms of custom cars. Hobie Jackson's checking from Northeast Texas. Sometimes I listen to myself. Hi, everyone. Michael Johnson, and hello to all from your friend Mike in Westland. Hey, Mike, why weren't you at the Autorama yesterday? I was recognized, I believe, by 3 different people. And I wasn't there that long. I mean, I wasn't there like all day or anything. I was just walking through the crowd, and I hear somebody go, Steve? I look over, and they're like, how you doing? How you doing? So Keeger Force is the book made it. Thank you for letting me know. The books, pretty much everybody should have their book by now, unless, of course, it was sent in very, very late or something. Dan Boyd said he bit a coin once, but he chipped a tooth. Now a curmudgeon says it's 290 Kelvin in Sin City. Remember, it's not degrees, apparently. It's just Kelvin. Sandy Breeden, hello, Steve. Hello, Sandy. How you doing? Greetings from Albania. Be rare. Greetings from Albania. I love it when people check in from the faraway places. Debbie Woodfield, hi from Rochester Hills. How you doing? Beautiful area, Rochester. I love that whole area up there. Mad Hatter Matt, OTVO, howdy from OKC. Mindbend, is the CRL going to be in the house? I'm not sure. I don't think so. She's been very, very busy lately. I'll leave it to her to explain where she's been when she finally checks in and gets everything settled. I know she's quite busy. And by the way, for those of you who follow along at home, I did in fact get a new Jeep. I got the Jeep yesterday, and it's a bit of a story. I'll probably do a video about it and post that on my backup channel. But my good friend JP, who checks in from time to time here in South Carolina, is a Jeep fanatic, and I'd mentioned him. I was looking for an older Jeep, like late '90s kind of thing. And I had a Jeep mid '90s with square headlights, but I wanted round headlights. And he said, "Well, I'll keep my eye out for you." And so one day he sent me notes and, "Steve, I just located a Jeep. Check this out." And he sent me pictures of it. And I go, "That's a cool looking Jeep." And I go, "What are your plans for it?" And he goes, "I'm gonna fix it up." And I don't know. Why? What are you wondering? I said, if that thing is mechanically sound, I'd like to buy it from you, because knowing he's a Jeep guy, he's going to go through it and all that. So he had it for a few weeks, did all kinds of work on it, and then he said, "Steve, I'm ready to let it go." So I had my friend Mark, who runs Nostalgic Motoring, arrange to have the Jeep trucked up here. I didn't feel like driving down and driving back and all that stuff. And so it arrived at Mark's shop yesterday. And I had Mark's guys go through it just because I wanted to double check JP's math. And Mark called me this morning and he goes, "Hey, Steve, guess what? My guys found nothing on that Jeep that you didn't already know about." And I said, "Cool. So I'm doing the paperwork right now. I should have it probably Monday or Tuesday. And when I get it, I'll shoot some video. But I want to wait till it warms up a little bit. It's really cold here. It's like in the 20s right now in Michigan. So we will see when I can get it out, because it's more fun when you can take the top off of it and maybe take the doors off and buzz around with the wind blowing through your hair, that kind of thing. Although I guess at that point you may as well just drive your Cobra, right? Tim Nossen, when I was in Michigan, I couldn't believe how big Autorama was. Oh, it was insane. It always is. It's a sea of humanity amongst two floors of cars. And I mean, there's everything there. You want to see custom cars, you want to see non-custom, like restored cars, and everything in between. They've got it all. It's amazing. Squirrel Colony, did the gopher or woodchuck ever come back? Not that I know of. Kept a very low profile. I believe there's enough space away from my house and my garage for him and or his family to thrive without us overlapping in our spheres of influence. Andy Evans, yet another Eastern Washington resident with a 1947 Jeep CJ2A. Very cool. I love the old Jeeps. There was a guy at the Autorama yesterday who had a 1943 or 44 war Jeep that was restored immaculately. And he had the before and after photos to show you. And it's just cool to look at there's utilitarian. That's all they are. It's just a tool. They're so cool. 411 now. Have you noticed a difference in comfort over the folding chair? I don't really notice that because the videos aren't that long. But I'm sitting in one of their chairs right now, referring to Flexi Spot, which is the same company that makes that chair there. And they are very, very comfortable. I spend lots of time in these chairs, and they're very, very comfortable. Michael Johnson, I was at Autorama. I kept an eye out for you, but just didn't see you. My favorite vehicle is the pizza truck in the basement. I drove over many of the Ford Model A and T hot rat rods. Yeah. I ran through the basement also, although I was starting to get near the end of my tether when it comes to how much I don't do real well in really crowded environments like that. After a while, I start like, I don't know. I'm getting hungry. Let's get out of here. Mark Miller, I just got back from looking at a 2003 Ford Explorer Sport. See, that's my old Explorer. My old Explorer is an 02 Ford Explorer Sport, the two-door. And I love that thing. I've got 160 on mine now. I bought it with 75 from the original owner, and it is just unbelievable how reliable it is. Ryan Holtzinger, Jeep people are weird. Well, that whole duck thing, I'm not too crazy about that. I won't be placing ducks on other people's Jeeps. But, it is a different thing. I mean, it's a different type of car. So Mark Miller's going to go look at a 1990 F-150 short bed 5.0. Andy Evans says that the Jeep is about as stock as you can get, and it's also the wife's family Jeep since new. Wow. Wow. Anyone else having audio issues? Tigerman99515 and the Midnight Bandwidth both say they're having some issues, but I can hear myself just fine, which is why I wear the headphones. And so once I put it in the system, there's only so much I can do with it. So the question is this microphone working? Or is that microphone? No, it's the correct microphone. Don't know what to tell you. KMW says it's a trip that 1990 vehicles are classics now. Yeah, that is absolutely true. Oh boy. David Palomero says it's the camera mic. Oh, testing. Then why can you hear that? I can hear that. And Squirrel Colony, 5x5. Oh boy. Hey, B. Dylan Hollis, I apologize. I did not see your comment last week. I saw later that you commented. You did send me a quarter that you used to adjust your 1963 Cadillac's carburetor. You said you're still daily driving, which is cool. I still have the quarter. It's on my set. It's taped to a piece of cardboard. You just can't see it. So there you go. Two left thumbs as the crackling is on the long vowels. And Bill Clay, the sound is good. Tigerman99515, thoughts on Gene Hackman passing? Well, there's two things to talk about there. One is simply that he was a great actor, but he'd retired a few years back, and I liked him. He was in a lot of really good roles. But there's a lot of very, very strange facts coming out about his death. We don't know enough about it to really weigh in on it. But yeah, I'm very anxious to see what they come up with, because now they're suggesting that he may have passed away a lot earlier than they found him. So Mark Miller says he refreshed and it seems fine. And Daniel Player says audio issues were short-lived. Thank you. Oh boy. Bill Clay, what kind of watch are you wearing? It is a Breitling Navitimer. Daniel Kester, how is Mr. Leno doing? Jay Leno. I talked to Jay a couple weeks ago. He's doing fine. He had a couple issues. He got a little singed under one of his cars. Then he crashed his motorcycle. Then he fell down a hill. All unrelated to each other. And some people have pointed out he probably needs to slow down and take better care of himself. Probably true for many of us. Michael Johnson, remember the 90s cars and thinking they were boxes on wheels. And many of them were. I mean, you know, the General Motors had so many cars that were just nondescript. They looked like toasters, you know. Oh, boy. Marlo G just got a midlife crisis car, 05 PT Cruiser convertible with 14,000 original miles. Owned by a little older lady, hardly drove it. Her son bought it for her and had it painted teal blue. A PT Cruiser. Those are cool little cars, yeah. Johnny Knoxville, and somebody earlier had mentioned about train thefts. They were stealing packages off Union Pacific trains in LA. I've seen video of that where there's just stuff strewn about and people climbing onto slow moving or stopped trains and just raiding them. So forgive God so we can hear your mouse clicking. I haven't touched my mouse since the show started. Sorry. That's something else. Believe in yourself, checking in from Ontario. Sandy Breeden, I saw where Jay Leno was volunteering during the wildfires out in California. Yeah, he was. In fact, he loaded up one of his fire trucks with a ton of food and brought it out to a place where it was a staging area for the firefighters. And he was standing there handing out food. Barbecue, I guess. So, yeah, Johnny Knoxville says you could have gotten yourself a Prowler as opposed to PT Cruiser. But hey, you know, cars are like, you know, taste in cars. There's always be somebody who appreciates that one car. There were even people out there who liked Aztecs, Pontiac Aztecs, right? Yeah, Ron Valley says that, you know, Jay Leno had his turban-powered motorcycle, which he still has, And I'm just clarifying for myself, so I'm not unclear here. And he tells the story in one of his videos about how a car behind him once pulled up way too close, and that thing's just got an exhaust pipe sticking out that's cranking out the heat. And he says it kind of melted some of the plastic on the car behind him. Oh, Toe Tucker, who works on Jay Leno's diesel cars. He's got a bunch of mechanics on staff. He does the vast majority of that kind of work in-house. He'll ship out specialized stuff. Like if he wants someone to, like, I don't know, custom make him a crankshaft for a Duesenberg, he'd probably have that done by somebody outside. But when it comes to just maintenance or that kind of stuff, I'm pretty sure he does a lot of that himself or his own people. So Michael Johnston's got a 67 Le Mans. My brother had a 60, I think it was a 68 Le Mans. And strangely, it burned. I'm not making this up, in a pizza fire. My brother delivered pizzas. And in those days, they'd put a little pizza oven in your car. I don't know if they do this or not, or if some of them do it or not. And the pizza oven caught fire and burned his car down, destroyed it, complete loss. He had insurance, though. So there you go. Bon Gondor, howdy, Mr. Lehto. Howdy, Bon Gondor. Lewis Browning, have fun with the timing belt on that PT Cruiser. He must know something that we don't know. Mindbend, you going to compete with Leno on how many cars? Somebody else referred to me as Steve 5 Cars Lehto. And that's, of course, a Monty Python joke. Arthur Two Sheds Jackson. But 5, I think 5 is my limit, such that if I need to get a 6th car, I will then, I think, dispose of 1 car. But I have such a hard time letting go, and I know that the bottom car on the totem pole is my old Explorer, and I love that thing so much. Valentino Stamkos says, hey, a curious question. I'll look for it. Shakes, Lude, have you ever taken the Viper out on a snowy day? No, I don't take it out if there's a cloud in the sky. No, actually, I've put 7,000 miles on it since I bought it, but I don't drive it in untoward conditions. James Scott, am I wrong? Other than a few exceptions, cars weren't great between 74 to 2000. Anything older than the 60s were really cool, but there seemed to be a lot of bad stuff in between. No, you're right. The cars hit a doldrums right around 74, 75. And it was a bunch of things that happened at the same time, some of which, like the smog, the catalytic converter type stuff, and the emissions and all that stuff. And there was a time, though, when General Motors still thought, hey, we can put a box on wheels and sell it. So Dan Boyd's got 4 cars. Johnny Knoxville's got 5 bonsai trees. B. Dylan Hollis says, one interesting thing I've always found about driving antiques is how so many dealers straight up refuse to work on them. They can't plug into them and fear them. And so I'm here to tell you that I wouldn't take any of my cars to a dealer except for like one that's brand new, still under warranty. And I've only got one of those. My other stuff, I would take my good friend Mark Lieberman at Nostalgic Motoring. Or if I just think my O2 Explorer, I know a mechanic. I know a good guy who will work on it for me. Duncan Campbell, good morning. Steve, how's the weather? I got 25 degrees and cloudy, but as you can see from the light behind me, the sun is shining on that side of my world, and it's not shining on that side. Don't know. Forgive God. Give the Explorer to a viewer. I actually had discussions, and it's almost like an end-of-life discussion. I've had a discussion with several of my friends about what would happen if I was to get rid of a car or something. Would I sell it to somebody, or and you always got to worry, because if I sell you my O2 Explorer, it's got a couple little oddities, but otherwise it runs great. And if something goes wrong with it, you're gonna be going, gee, I wonder if Steve knew about that. And I didn't. I don't know. The thing runs great. But on the other hand, I take such good care of my vehicles that if you bought it from me and you say, hey, Steve, the engine blew up, I'd be like, I know it's your car, but it would bother me. It would bother me. Blah, blah, blah. I would love a 454 with a 120 horsepower output. The good old days. Net horsepower. Measured at the wheels, it's like 3 horsepower. Shakes. Oh, Lou, don't forget about the bitchin' Camaros during that time. Yeah, Scott Summers says you could donate the car. We'll see about that. Lewis says YouTube's got a good video drag race of a Cobra, a Viper, and a Mustang. The Cobra won, the Viper right there with it, but the Mustang is 20 car lengths back. I've seen that. A lot of people have sent that to me, as you might imagine. So, oh, Mike Bundy says I've got 2 chickens. Winning. That's like a license to print money these days, isn't it? Sell those eggs, put them up someplace on an auction site. Janie Segrist, what about what they did to the Dodge Charger in the 1980s? You mean to take the badge and put it on a little car? Yeah, no, I owned a bunch of those little cars. Not because I was fond of Chargers. I had a 69 Dodge Charger, the full-size car, back in 1979. And in the 80s, I owned several of those little 4-cylinder Dodge Chargers. And they were decent cars, but they're disposable. You'll never see them anymore. Those cars are all scrapped and junked a long time ago. The only time you'll see them is at car shows, and even then it's very rare, very rare. I didn't mind the body style. I liked the lines of the car. It looked cool. But I had a couple that had engine issues. I've talked about that quite a bit here. So. Johnny Knoxville, hey, I won't tell anybody about the street race we did in the Explorer in Detroit. Oh, boy. Leo the Nomad, hey, Steve, you blew up Orange Juice's Rip It Up song yesterday. YouTube was still auto-filling in Orange Juice with the song title, and there were 10 threads dedicated to you in the comment. I'll have to go take a look at that. I mentioned I'm reading a book about independent music in England, late 70s, early 80s, and they mentioned a band called Orange Juice. And I didn't recognize it. I went and looked it up, and it's this great song called Rip It Up, which is a great song. And Edwin Collins is the lead singer of the band, so you've heard of him later. But I mentioned that song in a video or two, and I'll mention it again right now. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go to YouTube and type in Orange Juice, Rip It Up, and listen to it. It's a great song from that era. And they had decent success with it, but they were on a minor label, so they didn't get the attention they deserved at that time. Janie Seacrest, I had 2 of them, referring to the old Dodge Daytonas or the 80s Daytonas. Sometimes I listen to myself, reminds us of the time that Cadillac based the Chevy Citation and used that to make a Cadillac based on it. And that was perhaps the ultimate idiocy coming from General Motors and their marketing, because GM was the one that claimed that, see, a young man will buy a Chevrolet. And as he gets a little more successful, he'll buy himself a Pontiac. And then as he starts to settle down, he'll then get himself a Buick. And as he starts getting into the years in life where he's got a family and kids, he'll buy an Oldsmobile. And then when he gets success, when he's actually looking back on his life and wife and kids and dog and a picket fence, he'll buy himself a Cadillac. And they completely didn't understand that a young man who buys a Chevrolet, a couple years later, will buy another Chevrolet. And then they started doing things like hot rodding, like you could buy yourself an Oldsmobile that was all hopped up, like a W30 442. Or, of course, don't forget the Buick Grand Sport X Skylark. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're cool cars. But the idea that they were hot rodding those cars kind of disproved their own point. And so at one point or another, they finally said, let's get an entry-level Cadillac. We'll base it on an X car. And that way people who can't afford the real Cadillacs will buy that and get their foot in the door. It's like, no, that's not how it works either. Kyle Kowalski says, I've had several citations, but no Chevys. Tickets to the policeman's ball, you say? Lewis Browning, the GLH Omni. Was that the little box car? I mean, it was like almost like a box. Padre was a Cimarron, the Cadillac Cimarron. I think they said something about like when other people zig, we zag. or something stupid like that. Janie Seagrass, I'll still never forgive Dodge for making the new Charger a sedan. Yeah, they used that name a bunch of different times, and it just didn't quite work out. Brian, we had checked Steve on 0.4% finish. We might be related. How far back would you have to go to isolate it to 0.4%? like caveman days, right? Theodore Benson suggests that putting Dawn dish soap in your engine instead of motor oil can cause it to bubble up and potentially damage the internals. Really? I've always liked it though when somebody does something like that on YouTube. They go, "Hey, look, let's just take this engine, put it on a stand, fire it up, and drain the oil out of it. Watch what happens." And that's fun to watch. You wouldn't want to do it to your own car. Dan Boyd, Katera was zag when the others zig. Boy, is that stupid. Shawnee Lazor, Dio, HHD, PhD, ML. Very good chat. Love you, your channel, your show, and your work. And I love my cars and trucks. To everyone, have a beautiful day. Well, thank you for checking in, my friend. Victor Jason, hi, Lehto. Offensively normal. I've never owned a Cadillac. Neither have I, come to think of it. Gilbert, my friends all drive Porsches. I must make amends. Oh, boy. Slim McSkinny Pants says it's fun to watch, but from a safe distance. Yeah, every now and then you watch somebody doing something like that and you're going, what would happen if something let loose, you know? So I think I may have mentioned this before, but my brother, the one who works at Williams International, a couple of years ago built a jet engine by taking a turbocharger and reducting it and mounting it on a stand, and he got it to work. He fired it up and ran it. And I remember I saw it run. Every single time I'm like, you know, I trust him. He's a mechanical genius. but if that thing explodes, we're all going to be in the news tomorrow. Richard E, are you XXL? Yes, I am. Yes, I am. So for those people out there who are interested in sending me shirts, please do not send me political shirts or obscene shirts. But if you have a school or a business or a place that you think, you know, double XL, and send it. And by the way, this address is at the end of every single video. It's Post Office Box 168, Atlas, Michigan 48411. And send it there. And I wear 98% of them on camera. I've had one or two that people sent me, and I'm like, I can't do that. So Slim McSkinny Pants says a political shirt is an obscene shirt. Well, half the audience would think so. And the other half would be like, why didn't you wear it sooner? You can't. There are some arguments you cannot win. Okay. So you avoid them. Johnny Knoxville, does the Jeep shirt come with the death wobble? I don't think I have any Jeep shirts. Oh boy. Lewis Browning says, always watch the tracking when sending things to Atlas, Michigan. How about this? Always watch the tracking when sending anything through the Postal Service. I've heard so many stories lately about stuff just going astray. A friend of mine who's an attorney told me that he routinely sends things certified mail, return receipt requested, because he's required to by a statute, the Lemon Law. And it won't show up for 3-4 weeks. He also overnights things that routinely don't get there overnight. And he goes, the funny part there is they give you your money back, but you got to go in and fill out paperwork. So he goes, you get it mailed there 2-3 days for free, but it wasn't overnight like it was supposed to be. Doug Jones said we had a Dodge Slant 6 where he drained the oil and the coolant and ran it until it stopped. The next day it started and ran with no noise. No, that's the Dodge Slant 6 is possibly the most forgiving, indestructible engine ever built. And they made so many of those, and they're cool. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're not exactly race cars, but they there actually are guys out there who do hop them up. I mean, you can make a high performance slant six, but the main thing about them is you'll find some weird old Valiant out in the field and pop the hood and there's a slant six. There's a good chance that engine will still start. Dean Stevenson is checking in from New Zealand. Really? Cool. Yeah, Mark Miller, it takes a bill I sent through the mail 2 weeks to go 2 miles. And the problem is that the only place that you get away with the postmark counting is the IRS. And I've mentioned before, I once sent the IRS a very large check, and it didn't arrive for a really, 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 really long time. And finally it did. And they go, yep, it's postmarked properly. So I got to keep the interest, but how do you do? How you can do that? So David Domini Fowler, good evening, Steve. Good to hear from you, my friend. David, of course, is a guitar player in Aussie Pink Floyd, and right now they are in don't tell me. You guys were in Germany for like a couple weeks. So they're in Europe someplace right now, playing to packed audiences. And that's very, very cool. They're back on the road. I know they've updated their set list for this year to commemorate the 50th anniversary of Wish You Were Here. And I believe they're playing it track for track all the way through, which is pretty cool. So there you go. Slim McSkinny Pants says, I once sent a letter to myself from my own mailbox that never arrived or re-arrived. I did that experiment during COVID. I sent myself 2 letters where I put my address as both things, put them in the mailbox at the post office. I got one about a week later, and one never showed up. Ever. Yeah, David Downey Fowler, Slovakia. They're in Slovakia. Very, very cool. You gotta love rock and roll music for its international appeal. It is the international language that we can all agree with. Oh, and Austria tomorrow. Very, very cool. Guys just bouncing around the globe. I don't know why, but when I think of being in Austria and Slovakia and Germany, I somehow picture as being different than like going from Nebraska to Idaho to Michigan. And I know in some respects it's not, but then again, everything's a little different. So, Joel Kirschman, did you watch the refs beat the Wings yesterday in Ohio? No, but I had friends at the game, and it had to be a little chilly out too. News Now Riverside. Sergeant Rock says, I've got 6 Crown Vics, 2 Suburbans, 2 Tauruses, a Chevy 4x4 Trailblazer, 2 Dodge Dakotas, a 68 GMC C1500, a 62 Chevy C1500, and a 2 32-foot motorhomes, one a Ford, one a Mopar 440. Wow. That's a fleet. Coolio Canuck, happy Sunday from Canada. Any plans to move up near the Devil's Elbow and naming a Lehto Lane? I was not familiar with the Devil's Elbow up there. There's a Devil's Elbow in the tunnel of trees near Harbor Springs and all that, but it's probably more than one place on Earth nicknamed after the devil's body parts. So Johnny Knoxville loves the international language. Didn't you see Better Off Dead with John Cusack? Oh, boy. Johnny Knoxville, Padre, I want my $2. Jonesman 08, I'm surprised you went with the Jeep Wrangler. You could have gone with the Daewoo Lanos. I couldn't find one. No, I want something I can drive, not something I gotta, constantly, try to figure out. But that would be an interesting guy. SC Scout Guy. Howdy, Steve. We have pretty bad forest fires ranging all around here where I'm in South Carolina. The wind is really strong right now and fueling them. Oh, that's too bad. It seems like we got a bunch of crazy stuff happening all over the place. It's not so long ago we had the fires out west. Vincent Carroll's checking in from Ireland. Thank you for checking, my friend. Dan Boyd, yeah, what's with all this wind? Lewis Browning, what color is the Jeep? It's a dark red or a maroonish. I'm not sure if it has a. I'm sure it has an official name. I just don't know it. I haven't even got it home yet. Johnny Knoxville. Everybody wants some. I need some too. Better off that video. Oh, Marlo G. Speaking of music, what was your first concert? Mine was Journey in 1983 at the Tacoma Dome. I think I saw the Beach Boys when I was still in junior high. I've seen a lot of shows since then, and it was a good show, by the way. I actually saw the Beach Boys on one occasion when they had toured with all the band. Brian was there also. He didn't tour for the longest time, so. Serial 0411. Hey, Steve, late, but made it. That's all that matters as long as you got here. R. Dylan 517. Happy Sunday. Mr. Mamor would love to get a CJ8. Spike loved my favorite car as a kid was a 79 Newport with a 440. Longer than a short bed truck. The hood was like an aircraft carrier's landing deck. I mean, seriously. I remember I had a couple of friends with giant cars because, there was a time when you could pick a car like that up, cheap, cheap. So, Alexander Ganakis is Blink 182 in fourth grade. My dad messed up. But he messed up by bringing you there? Robert Terhune, I saw Jan and Dean in 1978. I saw Jan and Dean in the mid-80s. And they were playing a really small place. There's a place called the Russellville Ballroom. I've mentioned them before. Tiny little venue, northeast of Flint a little ways. And I worked at a radio station that sponsored a lot of stuff there, including Jan and Dean played there, along with, the two guys from the Turtles. I'm trying to remember who else I saw there. Dennis Yost and the Classics 4, that kind of thing. So Janie Seagrass, is it too controversial to talk about the push to make English the official U.S. language? Are you telling me that they're going to try to force me to speak English? Steve Hill, what year is your Jeep? 1988. Not 88. 98. Jeez, 98. 1998. I'm looking at different things here and screwing me up. Bob Blah Blah saw Black Sabbath in 1973. Oh, boy. Robert Terhune says the Beach Boys wrote songs for them referring to Jan and Dean, I assume, and that is true. Jan and Dean had a couple of hits, including Surf City. That was written by Brian Wilson. So, Wednesday Snow, your chuckle makes me smile. Love your show. Thanks for sharing your Sundays with us. Well, thank you, my friend. Hey, Randy Regal, White Lion, and Cinderella. I'm only laughing because I was working in radio in 1989, and we were playing those songs. And so, in particular, a song by White Lion called Wait is one of my favorite songs. And, of course, Cinderella had a whole bunch as well. Reinhard, man, change over the years. Are there any bands that you like now you didn't like as a kid or vice versa? I'm going to tell you right now, when I was growing up, I thought bands like the Carpenters and the Fifth Dimension and that stuff was like too wimpy for to listen to. And now that I've gotten a little bit older from being a teenager, I find myself listening to the Carpenters and the Fifth Dimension going, this is good stuff, And what's funny is you watch somebody like Phil from Wings of Pegasus who does singing analysis videos, and he'll bring one out by Karen Carpenter, and it just what they could do back then, analysis videos, and he'll bring one out by Karen Carpenter, and it just what they could do back then with a normal just natural voice versus today with pitch correction, auto tune, and all this stuff. It's mind blowing. And sadly, the story of Karen Carpenter was such a tragedy. But some of the music they made was transcendent. So I love their version of Superstar. So David Peterson saw Ricky Nelson in Rapid City, South Dakota in 1977 on a band trip. Hot Idea, the Moody Blues and Poco in Cleveland. Poco. And that's that's one of those bands. You go, wait a second. I think I can come up with one or two songs by them, but it's from that era that a lot of bands had one or two hits, you know. Retired Butcher Boy, you still think about buying a 3-axle military vehicle? Probably not. I just don't have room for it. M35 Deuce like I used to have takes up like the space of like 2.5 vehicles. And you can see it from space. Large Paw, Wings Stadium, Kalamazoo, Michigan, Poison, and Brittany Fox. Poison. Oh, and remember Rat with 2 T's? Rat. Oh, boy. David Phillips, the Kingston Trio. Douglas Gaxiola, I saw Little River Band open for Night Ranger at Irvine Meadows in Southern California. That would be a strange mix. Little River Band had the song Reminiscing, but they also had a great song called Lady. But, you know, that's the kind of thing that got a huge play on what they call adult contemporary stations or middle-of-the-road stations. It probably did break into the top 40, but it wasn't hot with the kids, you know. And Bob Blah Blah asked, are there any bands that you like now that you didn't like when you were younger? And so that's a great example of that would be, like I said, the Carpenters, the Fifth Dimension. And I'm not sure of any bands that I liked back then that I don't like now. I think my tastes have just gotten more expansive, you know. I will admit I don't listen to the Beach Boys as much as I used to, but I used to listen to them a lot. I've kind of got tired of them. Tapachaw saw the Who at the Silverdome in Pontiac in 1976. That's early. Right around that same time frame, Led Zeppelin played there, and so did Elvis Presley. And Elvis Presley, of course, died in 77. So Brian Fullerton, Benny Goodman. I was on a road trip with one of my brothers one time, and the car we were in had a cassette deck. It was a Chevette. We were taking a road trip in a Chevette, and it had a cassette deck. And I brought a couple tapes, and my brother brought a couple tapes, and one of his tapes was Benny Goodman. And I saw it, and I go, dude, seriously. And he goes, no. He goes, well, just give it a chance. And you know something? You start listening to it. It rocks. It rocks. It sounds a little different, but it's amazing. You see why the guy was so popular. You see that. Tigerman 99515, Creedence Clearwater Revival in Mountain, Leslie West, 1970. Swing Auditorium, I'm not sure what that is. Yeah, Spike loves. I'm a big Motown and blues fan now. When I was younger, it was strictly hard rock and metal. I'm the same way in that there was a lot of stuff by, like, you know, Stevie Wonder, for instance, always seemed a little too jazzy for me. And as I've gotten older, I'm like, yeah, I kind of like that. And you know, so Troy Bilt, Lita Ford opening for Ted Nugent. What year? That could be last week. You understand that, right? I've seen Ted Nugent live. I've never seen Lita Ford live. But of course, I like Lita Ford a lot, and I worked in radio when we played that song, Close My Eyes Forever. So there you go. Johnny Knoxville saw Bonham live in 1990 at Alpine Valley on the Stars and Guitars Tour opening for Motley Crue. Bernadine Sackinger Goodman was great. Harry James and Gene Krupa in the band. Bill Van Ram, ever say to yourself, I'll catch that band next time, but next time never happens? Oh, that's happened a lot. It's happened a lot. And that's one of the things when you hear about somebody passing away in a real untimely way when they're young and they're still touring. You know, the best example, of course, Buddy Holly. But I wasn't around for that. That was before my time. But I mean, I know people who went and saw Prince Um, Vanity 6, and Andre Simone, I think, was the ticket. The three of them, the three acts, play in Ann Arbor, and I couldn't get anybody to go with me. And they're like, "Who are these people?" Because Prince hadn't just hit it yet. It's getting there. So GW says he saw Ted ride a white buffalo onto the stage at Pine Knob, an actual white buffalo. I didn't think they enjoyed being ridden around, but maybe I'm wrong. Standard deviation. I saw the Ramones open for the Grateful Dead at Winterland. Crowd did not appreciate the Ramones. That's sad because I've seen some warm-up bands get abused by the audience, and the audience should understand that. Hey, look, everyone knew this was gonna be a warm-up band, and if the headliner likes this band enough to bring them out here, just tolerate them. And I mean, I've seen so many nameless, faceless warm-up bands that I've long since forgotten. I don't even know who they were, but I've seen some that were really, really good. And I saw some. I'm like, oh my gosh. I think I mentioned before is a female singer named Kings Elliott. I don't know what the name means, but her name is Kings Elliott, and she's from England. And she's got a great song that she did, and she was the first of several warm-up groups before, I think it was Imagine Dragons a couple of years ago at Pine Knob. And I was blown away by her. I'm like, wow. And then somebody else came out that was just not that good. Oh. Jay Klein saw Meatloaf in Hamburg, Germany in 2007. Wow. CWI Productions finally made it to a Lehto Live. Thank you. We've been waiting. Kelakaku Coton says, back when bands were successful like the Carpenters, performers had to be actual musicians and not LARPers. And, here's the thing I have a problem with is that a lot of acts that are out there nowadays will sing to a live track and call it live. And then if you look at the fine print in your ticket, it suggests that they're not live. And there's a famous instance of the woman who came out on Saturday Night Live, and they accidentally played the wrong track for her to lip sync to. And it's like, wait, what? But yeah, no, bands had seemingly more talent back then. So Johnny Knoxville points out that Vanity died in 2016. I did not know that. Tapachaw in the 70s, Bob Seger, Fleetwood Mac, B.B. King, Tina Turner. Oh, Tina Turner. Tina Turner put on shows. I love Tina Turner. Oh, I've got a bunch of her music, and when she went solo, she's amazing. And watch a live show of hers. Even as she got older, the amount of energy she put into the show was insane, and she sang. It was crazy. So, Brian Fullerton says Living Color was eviscerated by a Stones crowd at a show I was at around 89. I really enjoyed Living Color. Yeah, I liked Living Color too. And of course, they had the issue with the TV show, the similar name. What was it, Cult of Personality? I mean, I worked at a radio station. We played that. DePaul says Milli Vanilli. Now, here's the interesting thing. The Milli Vanilli music was good. It just wasn't done by the guys they put on stage. That was the weirdest part about that. Is I've seen documentaries about it. I've read about it. I've studied it. And there's a music producer in Germany, of all places, who was cranking out music, but he was producing with different artists. And somewhere along the line, he came up with the idea that like he would be more successful if he could put somebody out in front of the music and say, this is the band. And so he got these two guys who were very interesting looking, who could dance, and said, okay, you guys pretend you're the band. I'll make the music. The music was good. It's just that the whole thing was a hoax, which unfortunately has caused people to go, oh, Milli Vanilli, the music's no good. I like the music. Not all of it, but I've got some of the music. I like it. I know somebody went and saw one of their shows because it was a good show. Roxanne, I'm glad I got to see Tina Turner in concert. Oh, boy. Johnny Knoxville says Vanity died, apparently, her sister says, from kidney problems. So. Jay Klein says, my brother did sound for Prince, so I saw him a few times. I saw a lot of bands because of my brother. Yeah, but how was Prince in concert? I've seen live footage of him, and he appears to have put on a good show. I think that Prince is one of those guys who really felt the need to go out there and entertain, you know. So believe in yourself, like living color. Also, Brian Fortin, girl, you know it isn't true. Oh. Yes, Ashley Simpson, guys, Jessica's sister. Padre, I still have the Milli Vanilli cassette. I might have a CD of it someplace. The Tribes' Frank Zappa was the most underrated rock guitarist. Frank Zappa, listen to the song Bobby Brown. Go listen to the song Bobby Brown. I apologize now if you haven't heard it because it's going to be like, what? But go listen to the song Bobby Brown, and then you understand that's a great sounding song until you hear the lyrics. Then you're like, ooh, you couldn't play that on the radio. And Frank Zappa knew that when he recorded the song that you can't play that on the radio. And so he recorded a song that I think could have been a hit, but you can't play it on the radio. So what was he doing? And so Frank Zappa was one of these intellectual musicians who put so much thought in his music that he thought it was more important to put out the music that he liked and that spoke to him than to cater or pander to like the radio stations or the record companies. Frank Zappa, I've seen interviews, extremely intelligent, extremely clever guy. And I've always been fascinated by him. But yeah, that's the one example of the song I go, just listen to that song and understand the choices he made. And in about 3 minutes, someone's going to come back and go, did you know what that song says? Oh, boy. Alexander Ganaka does Kid Rock before country and during country count as two different acts? I've always been curious about that. I'll tell you right now, go back and watch his set at Woodstock, where he comes out wearing the red Detroit Tigers jersey, which makes no sense because the Tigers aren't red. But anyways, and he opens with "Bow at the Bow." I'm telling you, it's one of the greatest moments of live music ever. It's an amazing performance. And then a couple years down the road, he's doing duets with Sheryl Crow. I mean, I've never met Sheryl Crow. Maybe she'd want me to do a duet also. I don't know. Or convince me to. Sable Miner. Oh my God. Me too, Steve. Saw Tina in Dallas. One hot summer evening. Opening act was Cyndi Lauper. Fantastic show. I saw Cyndi last year. And, you watch people on the news, you watch people in the movies, you watch actresses and musicians, and you listen to their music, and you might think you know somebody. But I'm telling you right now, after watching Cyndi Lauper perform and hearing her talk about stuff between the music and what she did during the show, I am convinced she's actually a good person. Because at the end of the show, towards the end of her show, she stepped down off stage. There weren't security guards around her or anything like that. She just walked into the audience and stood up on someone's chair. And the people around her were like holding her up, but they were just people. I was like watching it going, I'm fascinated at somebody who's that well known, that famous, to wade into a crowd without having big muscle guys around you to knock people away. And she turns around, she's singing True Colors. And she's like, she's leaning over, she's got her hand on some guy's shoulder, and it was just one of those moments where like it could have gone very wrong, but it didn't. I remember going, that's just an amazing thing. And to see her warm up for Tina would have been amazing also. That is one of those things where there's a perfect synergy between those two artists. That would have been great. Jay Klein says Prince put on the best shows I've ever seen. And having seen more than one, he would know. So, A. Thompson, any recent lemon cases you can talk about? Nothing out of the ordinary. Most of my cases are run of the mill. Bought a car, repeated problem, nobody knows how to fix it. There we are. Tim Nossum, what was the song that shocked you that the FCC allowed? I'm not really sure there are any shocking songs like that. I've heard some radio stations accidentally play the wrong versions of songs at night and stuff. One of the weird things that people don't realize is that radio stations, depends on where you are, may have their music in the old days on carts or on CDs. And I worked at stations that played records, and so I worked at a station before where they said the song is on this CD, play track 3. But if you put it in the player and didn't choose the track, it would default to track 1. And I remember a situation where I believe it was a New Kids on the Block song. Yes, I played that. And track 1 was the like disco remix long version, and track 3 was the radio edit. And I remember being on there late at night one night, and I accidentally hit track 1. And I'm like, oops. And I couldn't let it play because it was like way too long. And so I listened for a moment and I went, boop, and I just booped it over to track 3, and it actually worked pretty well. I'm sure some people were listening going, it's a new version of this song. Never heard that before. Oh, Spike Love. Remember when wearing a concert shirt was a badge of honor the next day in high school? Yeah, that radio station shirts. Kellicock and Coat says the Monkees were doing the exact same thing years before Milli Vanilli. Not exact same thing. The Monkees were actually singing. Milli Vanilli did not sing. Big, big difference. So when you went to see the Monkees play live, they were singing. 69 Cornet 500 says Weird Al is a lot smarter than people realize. Oh, absolutely. The guy's a clown, but he's trying to be funny. So Wade Pittenger shocked the monkey. Peter Gabriel. I've seen Peter Gabriel live a couple times. Puts on an amazing show. One of the greatest performers I've ever seen, without question. Without question. Bernadine Sackinger says there was a song called Timothy about cannibalism. Yeah, by the Buoys. Buoys, the Buoys. One hit wonder. It wasn't that big of a hit, but yeah, it was a little weird. A little weird. Alexander Ganaka, rest in peace, Kid Rock's little person. Joe C., he'd come out on stage and announce Kid Rock, and he was like Kid Rock's. I didn't want to call him, but he was always there for moral support. Mr. Black, Omega 1, that might be right. Alice Cooper, great guy on and off stage. I've mentioned before, I've met Alice Cooper off stage. Very, very nice guy. Rob Strecker Lurch says, just want to know if you saw the story idea I emailed you a few days ago. I don't know unless you tell me what the story idea was. I read all my incoming emails except for the ones that get stopped by my spam filter. STP World calls out to General RV, and I'm not sure why. So. Dan Boyd saw Peter Gabriel in 1986. I saw him in the, I can't remember what years that were, around there, maybe 87, 86, 87. But I also saw him on the Secret World Tour, which is available on DVD, but you can also see it on YouTube. And watch the last song and see how he left the stage. It was one of the greatest moments I've ever imagined possible. I'm like, that was amazing. That was amazing. STP World, General RV had a money fraud a few years ago. Are you isolating it to a single event and or something that only happened a few years ago? Oh boy, Dean Stevenson is like you get to drive a Studebaker Avanti. Who's got an Avanti? Kid Rock? Matthew Holmquist says that Meatloaf was one of the greatest showmen and performers out there, and I've heard that, but Meatloaf I think also started out on stage. Wasn't he on Broadway? I think so. I think so. Lewis Browning saw Bon Scott in 1978. David Phillips, Roy Clark. Roy Clark is a guy who most people simply know him from his TV appearances. Fabulous musician, though. The Prodigal Stranger says, "Come talk to me" from Secret World Tour is incredible. Yes, and it depends on where you saw him as to who he did the duet with. I saw him do it with Paula Cole, who did the song "Where Have All the Cowboys Gone." She didn't do that in his concert, thank God, but she did do "Come Talk to Me," and the staging for that song itself was amazing. So Janie Seagrass says, "I have problems with your spam filter." Go talk to my spam filter. Really? I mean, really? I mean, I also dig through my spam before I dump it most mornings, but I some mornings I get up and I have like 50 spams that came in overnight and they're all the same thing. We can help you. 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 And it's all trying to sell me search engine optimization for my website. Lewis Browning says he's been on Willie Nelson's bus twice. Yeah. And you probably still smell like pine knob, as I like to say. NZ Kiwi NZ Bat Out of Hell was the first LP I bought. That album sold like proverbial hotcakes. That album was, and don't get me wrong, it got tons of airplay also, but unbelievable. Now the curmudgeon envisions Steve being Dr. Johnny Fever winning Bad Axe. Well, I'll break the news to you. I was on in the evenings, and I was usually the only person in the building past like 8 o'clock. And so you drive into Bad Axe on the side of the road is a radio station in a house. So the house is still there. And as you go by, you'd only see one light on the building that was bright, and that's in the studio. And if you look just right, you'd see me in there going like this, playing the music, just sitting there. Oh boy, Glenn Campbell is a great guitarist. Also, says Dan Boyd, and he was as a musician by himself, but also he played with a lot of other people as well. Jay Blue, hey everyone, how's March going so far? We're about a day and a half into it, right? So far, so good. Alexander Ganaka, how do bands split their income? And by the way, he gives an example, Slipknot, where one of the players died, but that is a big, big thing. Because if you think about this, let's suppose that 5 of us put together a band, right? 5 of us. If you were smart, you would form a corporation at the front end or some kind of LLC or something, and you'd indicate who owns how much of it. And then the money would come into that, you'd split it certain ways. And it would make sense that, a lot of bands simply go, hey, look, there's 3 guys or 4 guys, we'll just split it 3 or 4 ways. But then there's always a problem with songwriting, because there are some situations where someone's clearly the songwriter and writes all the music. And then there's also some people who go, screw it. We get together, we jam, we come up with a song. Even if I came up with a riff, we're going to split it. And then, of course, what happens when someone gets kicked out of the band? And you hear stories about a band that's doing really well. They have a falling out, and then some guy leaves, and he wants to keep touring as if he's the band. And I mean, there's some famous examples. I'm not going to get into them right now, but there are examples of bands where 2 guys left and 2 guys stayed, and they're competing with each other. Gene Loves Jezebel. To yank one out of thin air for you. Who put out some great music, by the way. Gene Loves Jezebel had 2 brothers who were in the band who fought. And I know you're thinking, wait, Steve, you mean Oasis? No, I'm talking about Gene Loves Jezebel. And they actually broke up, and they're each touring as Gene Loves Jezebel. And one of them ran to America and trademarked it in America. The other one trademarked it in England. And every now and then they settle their differences and then tour together. But I've never seen them live, and I wish I had. I wish I do. Someday I might. I don't know. But meanwhile, it's something they could have resolved earlier, but they didn't think it was important. And by the time you realize how important it is, it's going to be an infighting situation. So, Jerry C., don't forget, it's called The Music Business. The Music Business. Doug Jones, the Tragically Hip, agreed all would share the same no matter who wrote the songs. Yeah, Tragically Hip is a huge Canadian phenomenon. I know people who swear by them, but they never quite got the traction here in America that they got in Canada. Johnny Knoxville says you have to change the name of the band to really get rid of an old member, but most bands won't do it. Well, but you can also buy them out. You can buy them out, you know. So, I mean, I've heard of stories before where a band breaks up and one of the band members who didn't write the songs forms another band and starts performing those songs. I had a friend who was in a band and that happened. And this is long before the internet. And he goes, "You're not going to believe this." He goes, "But this guy who's in our band left, formed a band on the other side of the country, and their entire repertoire is our music that we wrote. And wouldn't it be nice if we got some kind of, I don't know, recognition or possibly compensation for that?" Mark Miller says, "Don't forget to hydrate," which is true. Rob Strecker, are links allowed to be posted in chat? I don't know if it'll let you. I've never seen anybody do it but me. So, The Prodigal Stranger says the lead singer from Days of the New had a hit album, fired the rest of the band, and got a new band and kept going. And don't forget, Lewis Browning points out Roger Waters and David Gilmour had issues, you know. 69 Cornet 500, Dennis DeYoung from Styx tried that. JP, I much prefer Bare Naked Ladies versus Tragically Hip. I've seen the Bare Naked Ladies 4 or 5 times. They put on an amazing show. They've got a great catalog. They're fun to watch. They're entertaining. And of course, JP has the right to say these things because he is from Canada, but he's the gentleman who I talked about at the top of the show who hooked me up with my new Jeep. And he did a lot of work on it. Thank you very much, my friend. Appreciate that. Slim McSkinny Pants ELO. And of course, now I call it Jeff Lynn's ELO. And I saw ELO last year, and it was an amazing show. Yeah, STP World says that General RV got in trouble, and I did a video on them. Yeah. Serial 0411, what's in the pink cup? Green Gatorade. Johnny Knoxville. Motley Crue said they were signing a contract. They were done after their last tour 2 tours ago. Oh, Serial 0411, is the pink cups a statement of any sort? No, I actually got an assortment of solo cups. I'm not kidding you. After somebody commented on how many solo cups I used the same color, I bought an assortment that are randomly mixed, and purple just came up. But you can think it means anything you want. JP says, "You're welcome, sir, and I hope the Jeep lives a long life in Michigan." And it will. It will. I take great care of my vehicles. Dan Boyd, ELO is great. They are. JJ, how do you insure all your cars? Expensively. No. I have 2 classic cars. I consider them classics, although one's not that old, that I insure through Haggerty. And the other cars, now I've got 3, are insured through just a run-of-the-mill pedestrian insurance company that you'd see on the internet. or on television advertising. But I don't think they do such great work that I'm going to plug them here. But they've gotten along with me. So STP World says, I know you're a Simpsons fan. Al Jean often goes to see the Detroit Lions games. He just confirmed episode 800. Jazz CD, 1998, Mike Love became the sole licensee of the Beach Boys name after negotiating with Brother Records. Brother Records, of course, is the original company. And I know at one point in time that Al Jardine, who is one of the original five, had a falling out with Mike Love. And of course, Carl's not around, Dennis is not around. And so at this point, it's just a couple guys playing with a whole bunch of support musicians. And when Mike and Al don't get along, Al Jardine went off and was doing something that used the phrase Beach Boys in its title, like Friends of the Beach Boys or the Beach Boys family or something. And I know that Mike Love at one point either sued him or threatened him with legal action to get him to drop that, say, because he said, hey, you're trading on our name. You can't do that. So sometimes I listen to myself, so speaking of ELO, who is Rus? And why does he want to bring people down? I don't know if there's an answer to that question. I seem to recall I saw a interview with Jeff Lynne, and he said that they were recording that, and they needed an audio placeholder. So they put that in just to placehold. And somebody goes, hey, it's kind of catchy. Oh, Dave Beto saw the Killers. Brandon Flowers must burn mega calories during a show. He's always moving. I had tickets to see the Killers, but didn't go. But I've seen video of them live, and they're very, very good. I like them a lot also. As far as modern bands go, I like them a lot. Bob Blah Blah says there's a movie about James Brown breaking out on his own. I'm not familiar with it. STP World, I found some Casey Kasem tapes from when he was on the radio in 1983. You can actually listen to Casey Kasem reruns on Sirius satellite radio. They've got them on the weekends, and they just replay random weeks out of random years. So Johnny Knoxville is going to ship a pallet of green apple Gatorade to my P.O. box. Please do. Rob Strecker, the Lurch. Anyone following the Arbor 1 cases in 14A? I'm not familiar with those. David Arnold says back in the 80s, a friend of mine was a disc jockey. Sometimes he'd use two turntables with the same song on both and change the speed on one up and down slightly, creating a wild phasing effect. It's on the radio or at a nightclub. But I can tell you that a lot of radio stations back in the 60s, I'm not making this up, would take a record into a production studio and play it back fast, a little bit faster, and they'd record that onto a cart and play the cart on the air. So when you heard the original version on another station, it would sound slow to your ear. It would actually be like, ugh. And then when you heard it on the radio station playing it fast, it would sound better. Lofe saw the Mike Love version of the Beach Boys in Castlebar, County Mayo, Ireland. Great show. Would have loved to see the original lineup. Yeah, like I said, I saw them with Brian Wilson once, but I saw them without Brian Wilson, but the other four many times. So Johnny Knoxville, the Art Bell Archive online. Art Bell. Oh. To Paul 31, that Gatorade will arrive along with the case of toilet paper. I hate to say this, but it's absolutely true that every now and then there are stories that I literally cannot tell on this channel. And I keep thinking, yeah, someday you should though, But I'm at 570 some thousand subscribers right now. I think if I ever get to 1 million, I've got 3 stories that I love to be able to tell, and I can't. So maybe when I hit 1 million, I'll tell one of them. I don't know. If you meet me in person, go, hey Steve, tell me one of the 3 stories, and I'll tell it to you. I just don't know that I can put it on a video and put it on the interwebs. I just don't know about that. Oh, Novo I Pelkala, evening from Finland. Ilta Suomesta. I don't speak Finnish, and I can't pronounce the words that well either. So, Nabil R, is that RE20 being used for the live stream? Doesn't sound like it. Yes. The light's on. Oh. Johnny Knoxville started a 3rd channel, uncensored and demonetized. Oh, it's got nothing to do with monetization. One of them has to do. I can't say why I can't do it, but it's got nothing to do with monetization. It would get monetized, and it would do well too. Robert Terhune says, saw the Beach Boys in '92 in Palm Desert. John Stamos is playing bongos. Yeah, John Stamos is a good drummer, and he tours with them from time to time. So, Mr. Memore, do you get your Gatorade in powder form or mix it? No. This is I buy it by the bottle. You know, pre-mixed. Carl J, was that a stunt to get 1 million followers? No, it won't help me get any followers. I've tried that before. Josh, what year is the Jeep? 98. It's now the oldest vehicle I own because it's a year older than my Viper. Kalakakus is Finnish is supposed to be one of the most complex living languages, having something like 14 cases. Yes, it's a nightmare. My parents, my dad speaks it, my mother spoke it. But it's very, very complicated. It does not derive from any of the Romance languages, so none of it translates, you know. So, you know, if you look at French and English and Latin and Spanish, you go, well, a lot of these words kind of look alike. Yeah, because they often have common roots, but no. Finland is its own thing. Novo Iperkla says, I know people call Lehto a pretty common name where I live in Western Finland. Yes, and I'm assuming that many of them have a prefix, like Johan Lehto or something. Because my family name a long time ago was Johan Lehto. And my grandfather joined the army, and they chopped the first half off because it was too long. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Living in Old Florida, after you get to 1 million, how much of the story will be redacted? Zero. I can tell the whole story. It's if I explained why I'm worried about it, I think it would I don't know, it would help you any. Johnny Knoxville, is IKEA Finnish or Swedish? It's got to be Swedish. It ain't Finnish. Novo Ipericles says there aren't Lehto names. How do you spell the longer name? JYLHANLEHTO, but there might be an umlaut over the A in Johan Lehto. So Brian Fullerton, do the 3 stories involve a chair? No. Nate Fish, Finnish is bizarre. No offense. I'm not offended. It's related to Hungarian and Estonian. No one knows how Hungarian ended up in the middle of Europe. It's part of a family of languages called Finno-Ugric. Fenno, F-E-N-N-O, Fenno-Ugric. And I noticed my mother was also a linguistics. She had a degree in linguistics. She studied these things. And they're really not sure how Finnish came to be where it is and how it came to be. But Gordon Shumway says in Finland, they told me Finnish derived from some obscure dialect in Hungary, very similar to Estonian. And in Finnish, in Estonia, they say that Finnish is similar to Estonian. Yeah, and that's how you get somebody like Sibelius was a Finnish composer, but the name Sibelius doesn't sound Finnish. But Eleanor Stanford, hi Steve, Ellie from PA, just listening in. I appreciate that. I like that too. Don't feel like you got to jump in here into the mosh pit of the discussion and start mixing it up with these old timers here. Jump in and say hi. Mr. Black Omega wants to write a book about the three stories. It wouldn't be a full book. It'd be more like a novella. People who know me know one of the stories. They've heard the other story. And then the last story is something I've only told a few people only because of its nature, which there's a chance I can tell that before I get to 1 million. I really don't want to get too far into the weeds onto this. Oh, Star Strider. Hey, Steve, it's Southern Tauren, by the way, just on my channel's account. J Blue is Finnish, not similar to Norwegian. No, and it's not similar to Swedish either. And the Swedes and the Finns are neighbors as well. In fact, the Swedes and the Finns have had issues because of how close they are together. Okay, Novo Ipercula says, if I heard right, it was Johan Lehto. Yes, that's exactly right. Not common at all. Only 102 living in Finland right now. I got to talk to my dad about this. Hang on. Yes, I'm photographing the chat there because my father did our genealogy going back to like 400 years, something like that. And I've encountered other Finns named Lehto, who say that they came to America and their name was longer and they had to pick a half, basically. So JJ must be about a girl. None of the stories involve women. Alexander Gunaka, how often do you talk to your brother Jared? I don't have a brother named Jared, sorry. Dan Boyd, do they drive on the left or on the correct side? I believe they drive on the correct side. I believe they do. I do not believe that Finland has a quote-unquote domestic auto industry. They import vehicles. So Gordon Shumway says some cities in Western Finland have different Swedish and Finnish names. Escargo 01, aloha, Steve. Small town girl, checking in from Indiana. I was going to go off on a journey tangent, but I decided not to. Do you get dual citizenship from Finland? I'm not sure. I do not have a Finnish passport, though. So Novo says we drive on the correct side. I have a Camaro. I have to assume that American muscle is popular in Finland. Tigerman 99515. Is there a good World War II movie about Finland and its confusing role with Germany and Russia? Is this literally somebody walking up and putting a tee in front of me and putting a softball on it and handing me an aluminum baseball bat and going, okay, I'm going to step back now. You get 3 swings. Like, or are you talking like a hardcore, like actual historically accurate movie? Because Sisu is such a movie. But it's not historically the best movie out there. I'm not sure there actually are any good. I know there are some good Finnish movies about World War II, but I'm not quite sure. Daniel Kester, hey Steve, how's your dad doing? He's doing fine. Thank you for asking. He's getting up there. He's in his 90s now. So Star Strider points out that the small town girl's been living in a small town world. Kelikakis' Lehto could be kind of like Smith. Yes. But yeah, sort of. Bill Clay, who is the voice of your intro and outro on your videos? That would be the Canadian robot lady. Her name is Heather. She's not in the house today, but she often does stop in. But she's I believe still busy right now with some things she's taking care of. But she'll often jump into the discussion here. But she's been doing those now for me for 5 years, 6 years, something like that. Quite a while. Quite a while. G. Keyman says if you're running the live through your computer, you can grab a snapshot by hitting Shift and Print and Screen key, or Shift and Print Screen key. But you have to paste it in graphics. Yeah, it was easier for me to take a picture. Oh. Jay Blue says, wow, good for him. My grandmother lived to 94, just passed. Tell me, said hi. Yeah, my mother passed away a couple of years ago, but my mother was older than my father, and she made it to 94. So longevity is something that we have in our family. Oh, Star Strider says he's going the Billy Joel route, not the Journey route. Yeah, Novo says most Finnish people don't drive American unless you count Teslas because gas is so expensive. Yeah, Low Face reminds us, don't forget about the Molotov cocktail. The Molotov cocktail. Oh, boy. Gilbert says, I think she's moving. Didn't she mention that? She might have. Wade Pittenger, did any litigation in your career result in confidentiality agreements? Very, very rarely, but occasionally I've seen defendants tell us that they wanted the plaintiff to not be able to disclose how a case settled. They could say it settled favorably or they settled the case, but they didn't want talking about the settlement later. Very, very uncommon. Usually doesn't happen like in a lemon law case or something. But I've seen that before. They're just concerned about if people start talking about this, then word will get out that, hey, we settle cases. And, oh, hey, they're throwing money around. Mark Miller, do you get more money if I leave your live stream up? I have to go. Don't worry about it. We're talking fractions of a penny. I can get 7/8 of a penny instead of 6/8. And yes, it's improper. I don't care. Oh. Daniel Kester, my great-grandfather on my dad's side, was born in 1880 and died in 1964. That's really close to the time frame of my grandfather, my father's father. He was born in the 1800s, and he died in the late 60s, early 70s. So he went from hearing that airplanes were flying to seeing a man walk on the moon, which is, I think, the best timeline you can say, and of course, a couple wars in there and all kinds of crazy stuff. So Fred Stone says, I come from a family of long livers. My grandfather's liver was 3 feet long, 3 feet long when he died. James Morrison, have a good day, Steve. Enjoy your videos. Thank you. I appreciate that. Randy Regal is a karaoke joke about Billy Joel. If you want to watch a drunk person sing Billy Joel, just watch Billy Joel. Does he drink when he performs, or do you just think he sounds that way? Blah, blah, blah. My grandmother was born in 1904, and she died at 104 in 2008. Wow. That's quite a bit. James Scott, I'd like to hear what Steve's favorite case was. Your favorite case I worked on, or favorite result, or talking like Supreme Court or state of Michigan? What? Dan Boyd says Kenny got shot in Lincoln, and Lincoln got shot in a Ford. All those amazing coincidences. Jay Klein, my great uncle, was born in 88. It is 1888 and died in 1983. Wow. Slim McSkinny Pants says everyone in my family left the earth at the age of 78. I'm not buying green bananas from 77. It's like all those rock stars who died at 27. If you're a rock star and you do hard drugs and you're 26, you might want to stop for a year. Oh, boy. Yeah, so Kelikakis is when she was born, they had no running water, no electricity, no automobiles, and no income tax. Yeah, and interestingly, the electricity is an interesting one. And it also depends on what part of the country you're in. I mean, because some of that stuff, like electrification, happened first, like on the East Coast, and it worked its way across and so on. Got 26 degrees here. James Scott, most satisfying case outcome in general. I've had some starstruck. How do you explain Steven Tyler? There's some people in the Rolling Stones who'd like to talk to you also. I've had some interesting cases. It all depends. I've had a jury come back and award my clients $4,900. $4,900. And you might go, wow, you could have done that in small claims court. And then on that $4,900 award, we got a judgment of something like $22,000. And then it was a huge result, but it was very gratifying, but it was not a big dollar amount. But on the other hand, I've also had some cases before where, I've sent a demand letter to somebody and just said, hey, my client says you owe them this. I think here's why. And if you don't pay up, we're going to sue you. And I've had somebody just, okay, here, take my money. For an attorney, it's like, okay, but it's you don't have enough of those to make up for the ones that are a pain, where defendants fight a case that they are going to lose, and they know they're going to lose, and they don't care. And I know this is backwards, but I had years ago a guy who defended one of the big three automakers, and I won't say which one, Chrysler, but he would defend every single case as if it was the end of the world. And it was the weirdest thing, because as the cases got really, really close to trial, he didn't settle them. And he was forcing plaintiff's counsel to do all kinds of stuff. He's delaying the cases, all this stuff. And so finally, I had a case where a client of mine got so ticked off, she goes, I don't want to settle. I want to go to court. I don't care. I told him, I said, he's going to make us a settlement offer. So we got a trial date from a court. We were at my office after 5 o'clock preparing for trial the next day. And the attorney calls me up and goes, hey, Steve, we want to settle. And I said, we've already been through this. You can't. We're not going to settle because you could have settled this 6 months ago, a year ago. We want a full buyback, all my attorney fees, everything. And he goes, you're not going to get that. And I go, great, we'll see you in court. But a half an hour later, he calls back. And he goes, for reasons not germane to this conversation, My clients agreed to pay you your entire ask. Whatever reasons they had, they were entirely germane to the conversation. And so I go, let me talk to my clients. So I hang the phone up and I tell my clients, I go, they've offered to give us every single thing that you want. If we go to court and win, it's what you're going to get. And my client goes, well, of course we'll take that, but why'd they do this? And I go, I don't know. They do this in all their cases. So Keith Richards, Gordon Shumway points out, is a genetic marvel. There's a guy they really should be studying. They really should. Serial 0411, have you ever been to salt mines under Detroit? No, I have not. I've heard about them. But the funniest thing I've mentioned before is that I wrote a book about Douglas Houghton, who explored the state of Michigan in the 1830s looking for salt. And they found salt springs up near Sanford, Michigan. And later on, they were pumping brine out of the ground to get salt. No, I don't know how it works. But anyways, the entire time there was salt directly below them. It was just so far down they didn't know it was there yet. Johnny Knoxville, they did it because they thought the client would give up. Well, no, but you got a lawsuit filed. Clients are going to give up a lawsuit. They're hoping by dragging it out that they'll beat them down and they'll take less money. Insylum. Hello, everyone. Hello, Insylum. Probably mispronouncing your name too. I apologize. Dave Beddoes used to install and repair party lines back in the day. Only did 4 parties per line, 20 hertz and 30 hertz, tip and ring. My grandmother was on a party line with her house near Alston, Michigan, not far from Nisula, just west of Baraga. Oh. Kellicock, did you ever have any neighbors who still had a party line? Had neighbors with that once, and they were so much cheaper. Yeah, I'm not sure when party lines disappeared, but I mean there were a couple big changes that happened in telecommunications. Bob Lawless, so you are from Alston. Inside joke. I've been there many times. There's actually a bar in Alston, Michigan called the Church in the Valley, which is a bar. And when I was a little kid, it was called Tommy's Bar, and it's a little building, right where this road that my grandmother lives off of comes into the local highway. And there's a creek that goes underneath that little road, and the creek does show up on maps called Mill Creek, but we didn't know what it was called when we were little kids. And we'd go fishing on that creek for trout, and we'd go up there, and all we had is fish hooks and fishing line, and you'd get a stick and carve it, and you go get worms. This is like right out of Norman Rockwell, but Dr. Rick, so happy to see you on this first Sunday in March. Thank you, my friend. David Phillips, the Yoopers. Yeah, and the Yoopers have also got their tourist trap not far outside of the Marquette area. Dan Boyd, party lines probably remained in rural areas long after single lines became a standard. I'm sure they did, but I'm wondering at some point or another, I think they kind of had to get rid of them due to the technology. But living in Old Florida in 1976 still had a party line. Wow. Interesting question. Eric Torget asks, is it legal for a city to exempt itself from its own codes like building and such? Interesting question is, if it's not, who's going to enforce it? So let's suppose they have a building inspector and you walk into City Hall and you say, excuse me, but that right there is not the code. Why is that? And the building inspector goes, what are you going to do about it? So there's often a weird situation that happens like that. So if they did exempt themselves, they may have to say there's a reason for the exemption, but is it an actual written, carved in stone exemption, or is it something that just became that way because they won't enforce it against themselves? That's the real question. The Prodigal Stranger asked about Yoopers. The state of Michigan is made up of 2 peninsulas, One looks like this from your perspective, right? Other looks like this from your perspective. Lower Peninsula, Upper Peninsula. UP is what they call the Upper Peninsula, and they often refer to people from the UP as Upers. I don't often use the term because I just don't like it, but I got a lot of friends in the UP. And there was a band called the Upers, which was like a parody band making fun of people in the UP and how they talk. They had a song, I believe, called Deer Camp, which is pretty much like the national anthem up there. Oh, Jay Klein says party lines existed in Southeast Indiana into the early 1980s. 1980s. Okay. And Robert Buckle says the last party line was discontinued in Woodbury, Connecticut, 1991. Oh, blah, blah, blah. Why do they call it dialing a phone when there hasn't been a dial on a phone for 50 years? Same reason that I say that I film things with my camera. No, you don't. There's no film in your camera. You're not filming anything. Words often evolve and change. So. Blissfulness. Oh, blissfulnessence. Code enforcement equals the city HOA. Sometimes I listen to myself. So back in the 70s, my hometown had a bar called the Library. There is a bar called the Library in Houghton, Michigan, not far from Michigan Tech University. I went there once, had a very weird experience. I've never gone back, and I never will. I'll tell you that story. A friend of mine and I went up north to the library. We were doing research up there for something else. And we decided to meet with friends of his who live in Houghton. And they said, let's meet at the library. I go, I've never been there before. So we all go into the library. We get seats. We're seated around the table. And we're just chit-chatting. And my friends' friends who live in Houghton had never lived in a small town before. They lived in some big, big town someplace else. And they're talking about what life was like in the small town of Houghton, Michigan. And I go, you guys don't understand small towns. Okay, first of all. I go, I lived in Bad Axe for 2 years. Okay. Bad Axe is a small town. Houghton's not a small town. And they will give us some examples. So I started telling them examples about life in Bad Axe. And they're like laughing, oh my God, that's crazy, you know? And so we're eating our dinner. And there's a table of people behind us back here. And it's a husband, wife, and their kids. I think they're kids. And they get up to leave. And my friend who's over here kind of points like, hey, there's somebody behind you. So I turn around as the guy goes, and I have to clean the language up. He goes, if you don't like this place, get the F out of here. And he yelled it so loudly that everybody in the restaurant like looked at the guy, and then he stormed out. I wasn't talking about Houghton, but I also wasn't talking to him. And then the manager of the restaurant, I stood up like I was thinking about going out and talking to the guy. And the manager of the restaurant intercepted me. And he goes, I'm so sorry that happened. He goes, but that guy's a little, we know who he is. He's a little. And I go, okay. And he goes, tell you what, we'll pick up your bar tab. As many of you know, that is an empty promise because I don't drink. I said, I don't drink. And he goes, oh, sorry. And he walked away. Now, don't get me wrong. It wasn't his fault. Although he did stop me from going and talking. But the guy yelled at me. And I don't eavesdrop in a restaurant and then yell at somebody for something you misunderstood. Meanwhile, I've got a good friend named Brian Parker. I've talked about Brian Parker before many times on this channel and elsewhere. He does a lot of stuff with debt collection. If you get sued over a debt, especially like certain debt collectors that are out to cause trouble, you got to check him out. He's got a website, and just look at Brian Parker on YouTube. You'll find him. Collection Stopper, maybe something like that. And he also handles some other consumer cases, including lemon law cases. And while we were talking right now, my phone buzzed, and he sent me a note, and he told me the name of the attorney that I said dragged everything out. And that's all he wrote, just the name of the attorney. And he's right. So he knows who I'm talking about. Everyone in this community knows who I'm talking about. So there you go. Oh, boy. Winston, that guy needs to have his teeth looked at. Oh boy. Johnny Knoxville, Bad Axe, Michigan, population 2,977. How many people are in Houghton, Michigan, though? I mean, I can look it up, and I'm a busy man. Oh. If that guy's crazy, the manager may have saved your life. Come on. Oh. MH08, I went to a 2-room schoolhouse, K to 6 on one side, 7 to 12 on the other. There's still an operational 1-room schoolhouse in Copper Harbor, Michigan. You routinely has like 4 or 5 students, and different grades and so on. Christopher, hi, Steve. Johnny Knoxville, Houghton, Michigan, 8,508. But it doesn't feel like a small town because it's got a university and so on, and it's the county seat, although Bad Axe is also. So, blah, blah, blah. What's more dangerous, a black belt or a law degree? That's one of the reasons that I wasn't that worried about anything that could happen to me at that moment in time. Zach, have you ever been to Tequamanon Falls? Many times. Tequamanon Falls are beautiful. There are a set of waterfalls. There's 2 of them, the upper falls and lower falls, on the Tequamanon River. You can drive to them. I've also taken my canoe upstream to them because I have a motor on my canoe. I can do that. And they're gorgeous. They're absolutely one of the greatest natural wonders in the Midwest. They're quite a hike. You got to cross the Mackinac Bridge and head north about an hour beyond that. But if you see them, it's worth the trip. So. James Scott is Manistee, a nice town. I realized for many years I misunderstood where the Upper Peninsula actually was. Don't feel bad. The United States Postal Service once put out a stamp that showed the UP as a lake. But Manistee's a neat little town. Cross the bridge, hang left on US 2, take it around. There's a town in the Lower Peninsula called Manistee, not to be confused with Manistee, but that's a neat little town. Tigerman 99515, does Douglas Houghton have any surviving family? I got a note from somebody recently. I don't remember where I saw that. I think it was an email from somebody who's doing research on their family tree and discovered they were related to Douglas Houghton. Then they found my book and read my book, and then they contacted me and said, hey, but Douglas Houghton had no sons, so his descendants had different last names. Now, people named Houghton may have been related to him, like, aunts, uncles, cousins, that kind of thing, but direct descendants have different last names. Daniel Kester, in my school for summer school, I had to ride my horse to school. Really? What are the chances we ever get a live stream with more people than residents who live in Bad Axe, Michigan? I don't think so. I've only broken 1,000 once or twice. Gilbert, there's 300 waterfalls in the UP. Some of those are only 2 to 3 feet tall, though. Yeah, there's a few cool ones. The Tequamanon Falls are worth it. The Douglas Houghton Falls are now open to the public. I did a video about that not so long ago over towards Calumet, Lorium area. Hungarian Falls, not far from Calumet either. And then, of course, you got the falls that are over by the Jam Pot, Jacobs Falls. Very, very cool to see those as well. But, yeah, there's a lot of smaller waterfalls. Thurston County's most haunted, a.k.a. TC, is lurking. Still lurking about. AM, I was a kid in apartheid era South Africa. There are party lines all over the place outside of cities. Zach, I've still not seen the movie Escanaba in the Moonlight, and I love Jeff Daniels. I have not seen it either. I love Jeff Daniels, but there's something about that. I got the impression that it was kind of like in the vein of let's make fun of the Upper Peninsula thing. Jeff Daniels, of course, was in the Purple Rose of Cairo, and he's from Michigan. And in Chelsea, Michigan, they have a theater that he's involved with called the Purple Rose Theater. And it all ties together. Craig Garbett says the tourist trap is in Ishpeming. And that, of course, like I said, is just outside of Marquette, a little bit to the west. My favorite Yooper song is Look Who's Coming to Sauna, Heikki Lunta. Heikki Lunta. And I forgot where I put it. I got a copy of Bullfight in the Sauna over here. Oh. In Salem, grew up in Michigan. I live in Wisconsin. I grew up in the Saline and Clinton. And many times people mix up Clinton and Clinton Township. Clinton Township's over northeast of Detroit, and Clinton itself is out west. So, Tim Nossum, do you collect Uperlights from Lake Superior? No, but I'm familiar with them. The thing about Uperlights is someone only recently discovered that if you take a black light out to a beach, especially near Lake Superior, certain stones glow under the black light, which is kind of neat because nobody knew that before. But the problem is that you take them home, you look at them, look how cool that is. I don't get it. You shine a light on it, then it looks cool. Okay, so do we just stand here with the light, or do we? So. Oh boy. Tigerman99515, what would you recommend seeing in general for a first-time visitor to Michigan who had a car and a week to 10 days to spend? What are you looking for? History, outdoors, beaches, forests, all kinds of stuff. I would recommend a road trip along one of the shorelines, either Lake Superior or Lake Michigan, something like that. But there's all kinds of stuff. Microsoft is shutting down Skype in favor of Teams. Do you have or have you used Skype? Yeah, I've actually got Skype on my computer. It's been a while since I used it, though. I had a couple old-time guys who still used it, but I haven't used Skype probably about a year now, year and a half. Devin Bound going to drive US 2 from one end to the other this summer. There you go. Image Docray, Henry Ford Museum, absolutely. Henry Ford Museum is one of the greatest museums. It's like the Smithsonian of the Midwest. A lot of cars, trains, machines, steam engines, things like that. And also Greenfield Village. It's huge, and it's very, very well worth the time. Johnny Knoxville made it to Holland, Michigan. Home of the Tulip Festival. Carl's Corner, did I miss anything? Nah, not really. The sites that say they're dead. You mean like when they put out like a wacky thumbnail that says, oh my gosh, this guy died so young, and you realize that he's not dead? It's clickbait? I don't know. Thurston County's most haunted, aka TC. You probably wonder why a wicked clown from Washington watches all your videos. Answers, you remind me of my dad's side of the family without the scolding. I wasn't wondering, though. I welcome anybody who watches. So, Star Strider, have you been to the World War II Museum in New Orleans? No, I've not. I have not. I've been to the Royal Tank Museum in Bovington, in England, but that's the Tank Museum. So, Alexander Gunakis says there are no good museums. I want to look at all the old stolen stuff and asked to visit my local police. Well, I know of many museums that are filled with cars. The cars aren't stolen. So, Leo the Nomad. You said you had no interest in being a judge. How about something like state attorney general? No, because again, that's an elected position. I do not want to get involved in politics in any way, shape, or form. Clickbaiters should be sent to Gitmo or Clickmo. Johnny Knoxville. That's good. Tigerman99515. Good camping. Michigan has got some of the greatest campgrounds in the country. Go to the Michigan DNR website and look up camping. They've got campgrounds everywhere spread out, especially along the lakes, along the coastlines. And you can go online, make reservations and stuff, and it's actually a very good bargain if you want to travel cheaply, camp and travel from campground to campground. The prodigal stranger says, when traveling through Michigan, don't forget stopping the Lehto's law offices. A better stop is Lehto's Pasties on US 2, just west of the bridge. I met somebody who bumped into me at the Autorama yesterday. And he goes, oh, I asked you about Lehto's Pasties. I go, dude, everybody asked me about Lehto's Pasties. No connection. Johnny Krazak says, I grew up in Detroit, missed my buddy's pizza. We talked about that at the top of the hour. Johnny and I split a buddy's pizza. Actually, we each had our own. We sat and had buddies at the original Buddies in Detroit. So, MHOH, you have to bring your own mosquitoes. Depends on what time of year you're here, but most of the state parks aren't that bad. Mosquitoes are worst when you're near like swampy, damp ground, or if you're deep in the woods. But campgrounds aren't deep in the woods in that sense. If you're hiking on trails, maybe, but deer flies, that's what you got to watch out for. Those things will bite you and you will bleed. D. Corbett. D. Corbett says Bobby Brown made it to #1 in Norway and Sweden. And that's a song I mentioned a little while ago by Frank Zappa that could never be played on the radio in America, nor any place they really understood the English language. I am wrong, though. Nobody checked back in to say, oh my God, Steve, did you hear the lyrics to that song? Gilbert says, I prefer Silver Lake, but that's for four-wheeling. Yeah, there's a Silver Lake State Park, and there's sand dunes there. And there's sand dunes all up and down the coast, as Gilbert pointed out earlier, such as Sleeping Bear Dunes, which are sand dunes like you wouldn't believe that they exist in the Midwest. And they encourage four-wheeling at Silver Lake. So if you've got a dune buggy, you can bring it there and ride it around, or I think you can even rent them and drive them around out there. And that's, one of those things. So Thurston County's Most Haunted says you got merch. All I've really got is those mugs that are on Zazzle, and I make no money off them. One of these days I'm going to shut that down. I haven't got money for them in 3 years. So it's if people want to buy them, but you're not going to, it's not helping me any. Zach, did you ever own an RV? No, but I've represented owners of RVs. They should put together a support group. Alexander Ganaka says David Hasselhoff was the music king of Germany. Well, the Germans love them. They're David Hasselhoff. It's a great line in High Fidelity when they're discussing Jack Black's character's band, what kind of music he's into. My music you wouldn't understand. He goes, it's more German influence. And the guy goes, what's that? Kraftwerk, Felko, Hasselhoff. Gilbert, is your Jeep going to be a mall crawler, or will you do four-wheeling? I'm gonna split the difference with you. I'm not gonna beat on it, but I will have no qualms about taking it off road. But I'm not gonna beat on it. I'm not gonna flip it. I'm not gonna, To me, it's more fun to take the sides off, take the roof off, take the doors off, and drive around a sunny afternoon. That kind of thing. Serial 0411, don't go to Silver Lake during Labor Day. Lots of videos of the carnage every year. I've seen some pretty horrific stuff out there because even if you've got a big, tall flag on your four-wheeler and somebody else does, Du hast. Ramstein, Brian Fortin. Occasionally, you'll get guys who are flying along in their dune buggy and they go up and over a sand dune and somebody else coming the other direction. Yeah. Bob Blah Blah says you can drive a Jeep without doors. I didn't sense driving it on public roads, did I? Not in the wintertime, no. Novo, don't hassle the Hoff. Scott Rogers, Silver Lake is beautiful. Yeah, you know, that whole coast, the whole west coast of Michigan is beautiful along Lake Michigan. Jay Klein, you get a hard top. No. It's a convertible top, but JP, my good friend, replaced the top for me. It's got a brand new top on it. So I'm not planning on driving it in the wintertime. I've had several people go, "Oh, you're going to hate that in wintertime." Well, no, it's the wintertime right now, and I don't hate it. So no, I'm not. I've owned a Jeep before, and I know what I'm getting into. And I'm not driving it in the wintertime with the doors off, nor in the rain with the top down. So sometimes I listen to myself, says, ever since Mork and Mindy have wanted a Jeep. And Gilbert says you can fold the windshield down on a Jeep too. Yeah, you can. That's a less common thing to do because that's where you will get pulled over by a police officer. He goes, that windshield is actually functional on some level. Living in Old Forest, I could tell you weren't into off-roading the Jeep when you thought camping isn't in the woods. No, I said camping at a state park isn't in the woods. Camping in the woods would be camping in the woods. Alexander Ganaka, what's the deal with rubber ducks? I have no idea. I have no clue. Kelakakis says, I remember the old movies with the robots who the main character would challenge to a chess game and the human player would always win. Yeah, that's changed radically. Oh boy. MH08 actually had a beer at that bar. Which one? Johnny Quest is wearing opposition team colors at the big house, a once in a lifetime experience. Hey, you know what you should do is you should paint yourself up like that super Buckeye fan with he actually like puts silver paint on his face and then wears all red. He looks like an alien. Dress up like that and go to the big house during the OSU U of M game and see how that works out for you. Lewis Browning says camping is being voluntarily homeless. Well, you know, here's the thing. When I was a little kid, my mom, believe it or not, took us camping. And my dad went a few times, but my dad somehow managed to. My dad always managed to have work that he had to take care of when we were camping. So my mom would take her 6 boys camping. And we often stayed at state parks, some more rustic than others. But, oh boy. Oh. Okay. That was stupid. My desk just got a drink. But anyways, you know, and so in today's video, I'm wearing a shirt that says Twin Lakes 906, and that's Upper Peninsula. And there's a state park at Twin Lakes State Park in Upper Peninsula. And, you know, we camped there. But I mean, there was restrooms, vaults, and all that stuff, and they had pumps with water. Now, we didn't have electricity, but we had a tent, slept on the ground, but we weren't like in the woods with like bears coming by and like, you know, poking at our tents and stuff. So it all depends on where you are. And I mean, I remember going camping, and there's somebody at the lot next door who's got a big old RV with slide outs in later years and big screen TVs on the outside of the unit with a satellite dish pointing at, you know, the Death Star or something. And is that camping? I mean, arguably it is, but there you go. Del Von Hawkins, what's the best way to reach you for legal help? Email me, Steve at Lehto'sLaw.com. Aaron Freeman, would you come on? 1 o'clock. Actually, 2 hours and 4 minutes ago. Yeah, the funny thing is, Gilbert's modern keyboards are moisture proof. They're also cordless. And so the keyboard did not get wet. That's why I looked down and got, oh, I got nothing wet but the desk, and the desk is wood, so I can wipe that off. Blah, blah, blah. Being a Boy Scout, we camped the lot. We camped in the backyard when we were real little. You're sleeping in the backyard about 2 o'clock in the morning. It starts getting cold, and you're like, I can be inside the house right now, couldn't I? Oh. Chris Madsen says, this guy sounds like a radio show guest. Well, I have been a guest on many, many radio shows, I guess. Oh, boy. Jason Brindamar says, I remember the famous Drew and Mike coffee spill incident. Did they dump coffee on their mixing console? Oh, engineers, man. If they had an in-house engineer, I bet the guy blew a fuse, figuratively speaking. Carrie Stoltz says Jeep ducking started in Canada in 2020 and took off with duck, duck, Jeep. What is, I don't even know what that means. Oh, boy. Zach Larson in Minnesota, we camp on frozen lakes. Engineering success. What preamp, if any, do you use to power your mic? I forgot what this thing is called. Hang on. It's from Shure, the microphone company, and it's got a USB-C port, or USB-C plug that plugs into the computer, and then it's got an XLR that plugs to the back of the microphone. And it's got a little green light on it, and my headphones are plugged into it, so zero latency, or close to it. And it works fine for the most part. Daniel Kester, while I can, going to say goodbye. Have a good week. Been good with everyone here. Scott Rogers says, Shure, RE20. No, it's an Electro Voice, RE20. Shure makes the SM7. Chris Madsen, care to comment on not political commenting? No comment. Delvon Hawkins. Okay, thank you. I emailed you. Well, let me see about that. See, that's the beautiful thing about modern technology. Is I can go like this and see right there, Delvon, subject line, urgent, etc., etc. So yes, I got your email. Somehow, the spam filters didn't stop you. Oh boy. DePaul 31, does the Shure have equalization? It doesn't have anything. It's just you plug it in and it goes. I've been thinking about getting a whole, preamp over here, doing all kinds of stuff, but no, not yet. Standard deviation, USB-C, USB mini, USB-A aren't standards wonderful? Yeah, now I see a USB like the original one. I'm like, what's that gigantic thing for? Banana DB, Steve and Camping with Steve would be the sickest Steve collab ever. Is there somebody named Camping with Steve? Or is that just me camping? But Nabil LR or Nabil R says the mic is definitely not coming into the live stream because as you moved your head, there's no proximity effect. Are you not aware of the characteristics of the Electro Voice RE20, my friend? Because it has a bass roll-off filter right there, which I've got in the position to eliminate the proximity effect. If I flip the switch, there'd be a proximity effect. Trust me. Scott Rogers, Electro Voice is a Buchanan, Michigan company. I don't know if they still are, but Electro Voice was based in Buchanan, Michigan, down towards here, which I did not know until fairly recently, which is pretty cool. Zach, if the Jeep duck thing started in Canada, shouldn't it be called Duck Duck Moose? Oh, Banana DB says Camping with Steve is another YouTube channel. I didn't know that. I'll have to check that out. Engineering success. Oh, I didn't know what that button did. Yes, if you look at the switch right here, you'll see that one of them shows a flat line and one of them shows a slanted line. And the flat line is the one that the proximity effect would take place on. The slanted line, it actually is designed to eliminate that. So when you're talking and moving around and running the bass line, you want to have it where it eliminates the proximity effect. When I was a disc jockey, I would flip it the other way, and there'd usually be a windscreen, the cushion ones, and I'd usually get in at a fixed distance and never move my mouth from here. And the proximity effect, when it kicks in, is cool. So there you go. Okay, hang on a second. Somebody's asking about Greg Lehto. Oh, Greg points out that after Mike passed, they would play that clip as a tribute on the podcast. The Drew Lane show. What's funny is I've never heard the event. I've not heard it. I know who Drew and Mike are, obviously, and so on. But the funny thing about that is obviously it was not a planned event. Something went wrong. Somebody spilled their coffee. And that doesn't sound like much to the average person, but it's a nightmare to have something like that happen with a mixing console, because that means that someone's probably got to shut that mixing console off and clean it. That means you got to switch to another mixing console. Many radio stations have got a backup studio. Next thing you know, you're doing your show from a different room, and everything's a nightmare. And the fact that it became a classic is really, really cool. And that's you can plan anything you want in media, but the stuff that happens on its own spontaneously is pretty cool. So Mindbend says demo it and switch it off for a minute. My concern is if I switch this flip the switch back and forth, I don't want to interfere with any of the settings that are already in place on the live stream, because I have so much trouble getting this to work right. With my luck, I'd flip the switch and you'd lose the sound. People go, can't hear you, can't hear you. Oh boy. Bob Loblaw says, since you displayed the microphone, your cracking came back. Engineering success, you using the OBS? No, I'm just using straight YouTube thing. I've got OBS. I used to use it on a different computer, and I've lost. I don't know. I don't know. Don't know how to use it. Jason Brindamauer, yes, never mess with things live. Engineering success says it's free. Referring to OBS? Oh, I've got no problem with how much it costs. I just don't remember how to use it. Someone set it up for me, showed me how to use it. I used it 2 or 3 times. I forgot why I stopped using it, but I stopped using it, and so there you go. What can I tell you? Banana DB, do you think working in radio or being a lawyer affected the way you talk the most, if anything? Oh, no, working in radio. Working in radio really made me self-conscious about how I sound. And I know if you talk to me in real life, your first thought is, boy, this guy swears a lot. Secondly, boy, he's sloppy. He says things like ain't and who'da thunk it. But I can shift gears if I'm in front of the state court of appeals and speak the King's English with Shakespeare, okay? I can if I want to. But I can shift it around, but I became much more aware of it, and I can actually do that better. So it makes a big difference. So when I'm editing my videos, I also have to listen to myself and watch it. And that editing process has also really impacted how I speak. Being a lawyer gave me some new words, different vocabulary, but the speaking came from working in radio for all those years. Tom, ever been to the Concours d'Elegance in Pebble Beach? I once saw 12 Tuckers in a row as one of the marquee showcases. No, but my friend Mark Lieberman of Nostalgic Motoring was the head judge of that category. 1 year they had a Tucker category. and they got 12 Tuckers out there. I did not get to go there. I'd like to do that one of these days. I just have not done that yet. Serial 0411 says, I think most of the switchboards in the 70s, switchboards or mixing consoles were preserved with a layer of cigarette smoke. Yes, especially the ones in radio stations. You'd open the door to the studio and just smoke would roll out. I mean, I remember guys who smoked like it was a profession, like they were professional smokers. Bob Blah Blah says, I'll verify Steve's language does change when you talk to him on the phone. Anybody who's ever worked in radio will tell you that they actually have a thing where it's like, I'm on the air, I'm not on the air. I'm on the air, I'm not on the air. And it's also true that most disc jockeys learned a long time ago that you never use foul language anywhere near a microphone just in case. And so I tend to not use bad language when there's a mic in front of me. If the mics are turned off and I'm not recording, all bets are off. And that's a problem because I got a phone right there. So if I'm talking on the phone, but I'm never talking on the phone while I'm recording, obviously. So there you go. Bonnie Sister says, here's a great idea. Give away one of your books that you produce each live session. You can start with sending me a book. You pay postage as I am very frugal. Okay, Bonnie, here's the thing. If you want me to do that, I will send you a book and I'll pay for the postage. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on your icon in a moment when the show ends, and I'm going to send you a message through YouTube, because that's the only way I can do this. And when you get the message from me through YouTube, write me back. And if you live in America, you got to live in the US. If you live in America, I will sign a book and I'll send it to you for free simply because you thought to ask. So Bonnie's sister is getting a book, assuming we can get this to work. Otherwise, I'm gonna wrap it up. We've gone long again. Go long. It's I show almost 3:10. I will talk to you guys later, like I always do. I'm gonna click on Bonnie right now. So in case I disappear, I'm saying goodbye. Otherwise, I'll talk to you guys next weekend and all week long on my usual channels. Otherwise, I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.